Pacific Sky, 1944. Ghost of Darkness. June 30th, 1944. Somewhere over the vast expanse of the Pacific Ocean, at 15,000 feet, two Pratt & Whitney radial engines emitted a throaty growl, piercing the impenetrable darkness. 4,000 horsepower, a testament to American engineering, hurtled through the night sky. The crew received vectors from ground control as if guided by invisible threads. The target, a mere shadow, loomed at 12 o'clock. The distance rapidly closed to 8 miles. They were turning to intercept. The target was a Japanese Betty bomber on a night bombing raid, utterly unaware it was being ruthlessly hunted. This was the Northrop P-61 Black Widow, a twin-engined behemoth with a 66-foot wingspan, a crew of 3, and possessing what no other fighter had. Radar caught Code 2 capable of piercing the deepest darkness. How did a plane, deemed unnecessary, too heavy, and too slow by USAAF High Command, transform into the elusive predator of the night sky? Why did what was called a waste of resources become a deadly phantom ruling the darkness? And how did this alia Triumph, as critics dubbed it, manage to destroy 127 enemy aircraft, whose crews never realized death was so near? Stay with us and watch until the end, as we'd be especially grateful for a like and a subscription. And of course, don't forget to tell us in the comments where you're watching from. USAF high-ranking officials called it superfluous, insufficiently sophisticated, and incapable of rapid maneuvers. Too bulky, sluggish, a useless drain on precious resources. But the enemy couldn't discern what they couldn't hear. No engine noise, no searchlight beams, no warning signal. Just 4 20mm cannons and 4 50 caliber machine guns suddenly materializing from the shadows at close range. By the war's end, these Night Quote 6 Swallow machines had destroyed 127 enemy aircraft, their targets never realizing the approach of deadly peril. The question wasn't why such a heavy night fighter was built. The question was how something universally deemed useless managed to transform into a phantom, ruling the darkness unopposed. The night of June 30th, 1944, wasn't just another combat mission over the Pacific. It symbolized the culmination of arguments that had raged in the USAF's highest echelons for nearly 3 years. As Lieutenant Herman Ernst settled into the cockpit of his P-61 Black Widow, call sign Moon Happy, the weight of institutional skepticism pressed on his shoulders as heavily as the tropical humidity of Guadalcanal. Ernst's radar operator, Lieutenant Edward Copsill, hunched over the greenish glow of the SCR-720 radar system, its cathode ray tube displaying electronic Quote 10A that were actual aircraft moving miles away in the darkness. Behind them, Staff Sergeant Raymond Mooney manned the upper turret, his 4 50 caliber Browning machine guns ready to augment the 4 20mm Hispano cannons mounted in the aircraft's belly. Together, this 3-man crew embodied everything critics believed was flawed in American night fighter doctrine. Stay with us and watch until the end, as we'd be especially grateful for a like and a subscription. And of course, don't forget to tell us in the comments where you're watching from. Quote, Third Own General Hoyt Vandenberg had declared during a heated Pentagon briefing just weeks prior. Quote 14, the British de Havilland Mosquito, light, fast and proven in European night combat, was the P-61's antithesis. While the Mosquito weighed 11,000 pounds empty, the Black Widow, fully loaded, topped 23,000 pounds. Where the Mosquito could achieve 400 miles per hour in level flight, the P-61 struggled to maintain 365 miles per hour at optimum altitude. But Jack Northrop had designed his aircraft based on an entirely different philosophy. The twin-boom design wasn't merely an aesthetic choice, but a functional necessity. The central fuselage housed the crew and weapon systems, with the two Pratt & Whitney R2800 engines spaced far enough apart to minimize asymmetric thrust issues in the event of an engine failure. The radar antenna occupied the entire nose cone, free from propeller interference. Most importantly, the aircraft's size allowed for a fuel capacity the Mosquito simply couldn't match. 646 gallons versus the British fighter's 460 gallons. Ground control crackled over Ernst's headset. Quote 17. The Japanese had been running these nuisance night missions for months. Single bombers would slip through the darkness to drop ordnance on American installations. Previous intercept attempts using radar-equipped P-38s and F-6F Hellcats had consistently failed. Enemy pilots knew how to use terrain masking and rapid altitude changes to break radar contact. Copsil's voice crackled over the intercom. Contact bearing 085, range 12 miles, altitude 18,000 feet, heading south-southeast. He's threading the needle between two storm cells. The radar operator's fingers danced across the controls, adjusting gain and sweep patterns to maintain the lock. It was an art that separated successful night fighter crews from mere statistics. Reading electronic quotient trend, while mentally reconstructing the three-dimensional geometry of an intercept in total darkness. Ernst pushed the throttles forward, feeling the two radial engines respond with increased power. The superchargers whined, forcing compressed air into the cylinders, each engine delivering over 2,000 horsepower. The aircraft steadily gained altitude in the thin tropical air, its fuel gauges dropping with measured precision. Range and endurance. These were what mattered in Pacific night combat, not the instantaneous speed that impressed crowds at air shows. Quote 23, Copsil reported. Quote 24. The Japanese pilot, flying by dead reckoning and celestial navigation, was unaware that American radar technology had been tracking him since he crossed the 100-mile mark. The strategic advantage belonged entirely to the hunters. At 18,000 feet, Ernst began his intercept approach, reducing throttle to avoid overshooting. The P-61's radar signature was minimal compared to its size. Another Northrop design decision that paid dividends in combat. The twin-boom configuration diffused radar returns, making the aircraft appear smaller to enemy detection. Not that the Japanese bomber had intercept radar. Their night navigation relied on optical cues and radio beacons that American intelligence had long since compromised. Imagine, deep night, the Pacific sky strewn with stars, and somewhere in that impenetrable darkness, an unseen enemy hurtles towards its objective. What happens when the only chance to save thousands of lives rests on a single machine many considered useless? How did one pilot, against all skepticism, change the course of night battles? And why was an aircraft designed for one purpose utterly unsuited for another? Today, we'll delve into the story of the Black Widow, an aircraft that at one moment became a legend and at another faced insurmountable limitations. Are you ready to discover how this machine tackled challenges and what lessons were learned from its service? Stay with us and watch until the end, as we'd be especially grateful for a like and a subscription. And of course, don't forget to tell us in the comments where you're watching from. Range closing to 8 miles, Copsil announced. Target bearing steady, no deviation whatsoever. Enemy has no idea we're here. This was the critical juncture of a night intercept, the final approach that separated triumphant kills from missed opportunities. Ernst had meticulously studied tactical reports from European night fighter squadrons, learning how German crews masterfully exploited the cover of darkness and surprise to devastating effect against RAF Bomber Command. The principles were universal. Approach from below or behind, maintaining radar contact until visual acquisition at the shortest possible range before opening fire. The Japanese Betty bomber suddenly materialized in Ernst's gun sight, 600 yards out. Its two engines were distinct dark silhouettes against the shimmering starfield. The pilot maintained straight and level flight, completely unaware that death was approaching from the 7 o'clock position. Ernst's finger settled on the trigger. 4 cannons and 4 machine guns were poised to unleash over 3,000 rounds per minute of concentrated firepower. This was the moment that validated Northrop's design philosophy and the excellence of Ernst's crew training. The P-61 was not designed for daylight dogfights or high-altitude intercept of enemy fighters. It was built precisely for this scenario, detecting unseen enemies in vast darkness and destroying them before they could complete their missions. The institutional critics who doubted its necessity had never flown combat missions where success meant protecting thousands of sleeping Marines from bombs they would never see. The Betty's wings erupted in flame as Ernst's burst struck its fuel tanks and engine components. The Japanese aircraft rolled over and began its final dive toward the Pacific, taking its crew and ordnance, which would never reach Henderson Field, with it. For Lieutenant Ernst, this victory represented more than just another kill mark on the fuselage. It proved that the Mosquito 34 Black Widow could deliver on its promise when the stakes were highest. Stay with us and watch until the end, as we'd be especially grateful for a like and a subscription. And of course, don't forget to tell us in the comments where you're watching from. By early July 1944, the first operational P-61 squadrons had taken up positions on opposite sides of the globe, each facing radically different tactical challenges. In the Pacific, the 6th Night Fighter Squadron operated from Henderson Field on Guadalcanal, their black aircraft carefully concealed under camouflage nets during daylight hours. Meanwhile, across the Atlantic, the 422nd Night Fighter Squadron commenced operations from Airfield Scourton in Yorkshire, preparing for the nocturnal battles that would define the air war over occupied Europe. The contrast between the theaters of war became immediately apparent in the first weeks of operational deployment. Pacific missions demanded long-range patrols over vast ocean expanses, hunting solitary Japanese bombers that approached American installations under cover of darkness. European operations required entirely different tactics, intercepting formations of German transport aircraft, evacuating personnel from advancing Allied ground forces, or pursuing the elusive V-1 flying bombs that terrorized London throughout the summer. Lieutenant Ernst's success over Guadalcanal garnered significant attention within night fighter circles. But it also underscored a fundamental contradiction between the aircraft's capabilities and institutional expectations. The P-61's 400-mile combat radius gave Pacific crews the endurance needed for extended patrols. However, its maximum speed of 365 miles per hour at 20,000 feet remained a constant source of criticism among senior USAAF leadership. This speed limitation became critically evident on the night of July 15th, when Lieutenant Robert Anderson of the 482nd Night Fighter Squadron attempted to intercept a V-1 flying bomb over the English Channel. Anderson's radar operator, Technical Sergeant William Hayes, achieved perfect intercept geometry, positioning their Black Widow directly behind the German missile, which was hurtling toward London at 350 miles per hour. The P-61 could match this speed, but barely, and only at the cost of structural integrity. As Anderson pushed his aircraft to its maximum speed in a shallow dive, the nose cone began to deform under aerodynamic pressure. The plexiglass radar housing, designed for typical combat speeds rather than extreme intercept scenarios, buckled and cracked as airflow created unexpected pressure differentials. Within seconds, the entire nose section exploded, destroying the SCR-720 radar system and leaving a gaping hole in the aircraft's forward fuselage. Hayes managed to maintain intercept data long enough for Anderson to fire a burst from the belly-mounted cannons, but the V-1 continued its programmed flight toward London. The damaged Black Widow returned to base with its radar system utterly destroyed, its crew sobered by the realization that their aircraft had fundamental limitations in high-speed intercept scenarios. This incident fueled critics who argued that the P-61 represented flawed design priorities. Nevertheless, these same limitations proved irrelevant during typical night fighter missions, where success depended more on persistence and precision than on sheer speed. Throughout August and September, Pacific-based Black Widows began accumulating a steady tally of kills against Japanese night raiders. The 6th Night Fighter Squadron's operations log recorded 17 confirmed kills during this period, with crews consistently demonstrating the aircraft's ability to detect, track, and destroy enemy bombers operating under optimal evasion conditions. Silence. A deep, impenetrable silence, broken only by the distant rumble of turbines. Have you ever wondered what happens in the sky when the whole world sleeps? What shadows glide across the nocturnal canvas, invisible to the eye, yet deadly to those who dare disturb the peace? In this video, we'll delve into the history of one of World War II's most enigmatic and effective night fighters, the Northrop P-61 Black Widow. We'll uncover how this aircraft, initially met with skepticism, became a legend of the night sky. How did Black Widow crews transform perceived flaws into deadly advantages? And why, despite its undeniable effectiveness, did this aircraft become ensnared in a paradox of victory? Imagine, you're an enemy bomber pilot flying through impenetrable darkness. You're confident in your invisibility, your invulnerability. And suddenly, without warning, hellfire erupts. What was it? Where did it come from? How? This is about you, about your pain, about how you found yourself in a situation where there seemed to be no way out, but then found a way to cope. We've often said that audience expectations must be met from the very first seconds. And now, a story full of mysteries and broken paradigms unfolds before us. Are you ready to discover how the P-61 night fighter, which many considered too large and complex, revolutionized night aerial combat? This is something you absolutely couldn't have expected. Your brain has probably already protested. Why is that? Explain yourself. Stay with us and watch until the end. We'd be especially grateful for your like and subscription. And of course, tell us in the comments where you're watching this video from. So, let's return to the P-61. The Black Widow's initial successes in the Pacific theater laid the groundwork for a unique tactical doctrine. Instead of attempting to mitigate the aircraft's perceived shortcomings, crews focused on unleashing its unique capabilities. They mastered the art of approaching targets from below and behind, using radar to maintain contact while remaining outside visual detection range. The twin boom tail, providing a minimal radar signature when viewed directly from the front, allowed Black Widows to close the distance for cannon fire before enemy pilots even realized a threat existed. This was a true breakthrough in night combat tactics. European operations, however, evolved along different scenarios. Crews of the 482nd Night Fighter Squadron adapted their methods to counter German transport aircraft and reconnaissance flights. The crowded airspace over Western Europe demanded unprecedented coordination with ground-controlled intercept stations, as numerous aircraft are, both friendly and hostile, operated simultaneously in confined areas. Black Widow crews found themselves in situations demanding exceptional navigation and lightning-fast reactions, presenting a new challenge to their skill. But this was only the beginning. Captain Lee Kendall, transferred to the Pacific Theater and joining the 548th Night Fighter Squadron, applied European experience to Japanese tactics. His aircraft, nicknamed Hwanan-50 by ground personnel, embodied the lessons learned from months of nocturnal combat over France and Belgium. Kendall quickly understood that successful intercepts demanded patience above all other virtues. It was more crucial to wait for the ideal approach angle than to rush into suboptimal firing positions. This philosophy proved decisive. During operations in late September near Iwo Jima, where Japanese night bombers began employing sophisticated evasion techniques gleaned from European theater intelligence reports, Kendall's philosophy proved its efficacy. Enemy pilots executed sharp altitude and course changes to break radar contact, forcing American interceptors to repeatedly reacquire targets during a single intercept attempt. The P-61's 16-mile radar range provided ample buffer for reacquisition, but only if crews remained disciplined in their approach methods. Stay with us and watch until the end. We'd be especially grateful for your like and subscription. And of course, tell us in the comments where you're watching this video from. It was in these complex intercept scenarios that the aircraft's heavy armament configuration became its decisive advantage. Unlike single-engine fighters modified for night operations, the Black Widow carried sufficient firepower to destroy targets in short firing passes. Its 420mm Hispano cannons could penetrate bomber armor at ranges exceeding 1,000 yards, while the 450 caliber Browning machine guns provided enough volume of fire to ensure target destruction even with a marginal hit probability. It was a true barrage of fire that left the enemy no chance. Statistical analysis of combat results by October 1944 conclusively validated Northrop's initial design concept. Black Widow crews achieved significantly higher kill ratios than modified day fighters repurposed for night interception. This was attributed to the P-61's integrated radar and weapon systems, which allowed for precise attacks rather than relying on spray and pray tactics. The aircraft's size and complexity, once considered drawbacks, proved crucial for mission success in operational conditions. But what happened next? However, these tactical successes couldn't overcome strategic reality. By November, German air activity over Western Europe had drastically diminished. Fuel shortages and catastrophic pilot losses reduced Luftwaffe night operations to minimal levels. Japanese night bombing also decreased as American air superiority eliminated most enemy bomber bases within reach of strategic targets. The P-61 increasingly found itself without suitable targets, leading to renewed questions about production priorities. The paradox became increasingly apparent to the crews who had proven their aircraft's effectiveness in combat. They possessed arguably the most sophisticated night fighter in the world, equipped with radar systems and firepower that enemy pilots could neither detect nor defend against. Yet, strategic circumstances were eliminating the very mission set for which the Black Widow was designed. Victory in the night war ultimately meant that night fighters would become unnecessary. It was a bitter taste of triumph, wasn't it? Spring 1945 brought an unexpected twilight to the night fighter war. Captain Lee Kendall, now based on Iwo Jima with the 548th Night Fighter Squadron, found himself flying increasingly routine patrols over waters that once teemed with enemy aircraft. Japanese night bombing operations had dwindled to isolated nuisance missions, launched from bases hundreds of miles away by pilots operating with minimal fuel and outdated equipment. The strategic calculus that justified the P-61's development was rapidly disappearing. Nevertheless, institutional inertia continued to drive Black Widow operations, even as their tactical relevance waned. Northrop's production lines delivered the last of 706 units, each representing hundreds of thousands of dollars in manufacturing costs and thousands of hours of skilled labor. Squadron commanders received orders to maintain operational readiness, despite the clear reality that enemy air activity no longer warranted such expenditure of resources and personnel. This contradiction became painfully evident during April operations, when entire night fighter squadrons logged dozens of hours without a single enemy contact. Crews patrolled empty skies. Their sophisticated radar equipment detected nothing more threatening than weather formations and occasional friendly aircraft operating outside normal coordination procedures. Thus ended an era for one of history's most unique fighter aircraft. Imagine, you've honed your skills for months, perfecting every maneuver, and then overnight, you're told it might all be unnecessary. Your skills, your dedication, thousands of hours of training, all in question. Do you know that feeling when the world around you changes so rapidly that yesterday's achievements seem irrelevant? This was the dilemma faced by the pilots and radar operators of America's newest night fighter, the P-62. As the war's outcome seemed predetermined, they were prophesied to be useless, and their planes were called a waste. But what if this unnecessary aircraft was destined to deliver the final, most paradoxical blow in the history of warfare? In this story, we'll delve into the little-known history of how a machine many considered redundant not only proved indispensable, but also brought one of humanity's bloodiest conflicts to a close. How did the P-61, despite all criticism, manage to change the course of night operations? What was the true cost of its success, and why did its most decisive victory turn into such bitter irony? Prepare to discover how in the shadow of a war where every resource counted, one aircraft and its crew managed to overturn perceptions of tactical effectiveness. Stay with us and watch until the end, because this story deserves your attention. We'd be especially grateful for a like and a subscription, and be sure to let us know in the comments where you're watching from. The psychological pressure on flight crews was immense. Pilots and radar operators, who had spent months perfecting interception techniques, now faced the reality that their unique skills might never again be tested in actual combat. General Vandenberg's earlier criticisms sounded like prophecy as the war inexorably drew to a close. The massive investment in night fighter capabilities seemed increasingly wasteful against the backdrop of rapidly declining enemy activity. However, those same skeptics failed to fully grasp the strategic impact that P-61 operations had during their operational peak. Japanese command was forced to completely abandon systematic night bombing precisely because American radar-equipped interceptors made such missions prohibitively costly and lethally dangerous. The definitive confirmation of the Black Widow's undisputed effectiveness came in the early morning hours of August 14, 1945. Kendall's crew aboard their aircraft, nicknamed the Hapashin, code and 68-8, received coordinates from ground control indicating a single contact approaching Okinawa from the northwest. Intelligence suggested this aircraft might be carrying Japanese officials en route to Allied headquarters for surrender negotiations. However, standard intercept procedures remained in effect until unambiguous positive identification was established. Kendall's radar operator detected the target at 14 miles, meticulously tracking it as it descended through broken cloud layers toward Okinawa's airfields. The aircraft's flight profile indicated a twin-engine transport, likely a reconnaissance variant of the Mitsubishi Ki-46 Dina, modified for long-range career missions. According to standard doctrine, visual identification was required before an attack, but the pitch darkness and challenging weather conditions made such identification extremely difficult. As Lady in the Dark closed to intercept range, Kendall observed the target aircraft displaying navigation lights and maintaining a steady course toward a U.S.-controlled airfield. These factors could suggest friendly intentions, yet intelligence warnings about Japanese deception tactics remained relevant. The decision to engage or solely identify rested entirely with the intercepting crew, who held full tactical authority during night operations. It was these subtle distinctions that characterized night combat, where every moment could be decisive. Stay with us and watch until the end, because this story deserves your attention. We'd be especially grateful for a like and a subscription, and be sure to let us know in the comments where you're watching from. At 800 yards, Kendall established visual contact with what he believed to be a Japanese naval reconnaissance aircraft, flying without escort or any evasive maneuvers. The target pilot seemed completely unaware of the P-61's presence, maintaining straight and level flight, presumably navigating by radio beacon. Kendall's finger settled on the firing controls as he positioned his aircraft for an optimal attack angle. The burst lasted less than 3 seconds. 4 cannons and 4 machine guns converged on the enemy aircraft's central fuselage and wing roots. The target immediately disintegrated in midair, its fuel tanks igniting in a brilliant fireball that momentarily illuminated the surrounding cloud formations. Debris scattered over several square miles of ocean surface, leaving no possibility of survivors or recovery of the aircraft itself. Subsequent intelligence analysis conducted after the mission confirmed that Kendall's target was indeed carrying Japanese naval personnel, attempting to establish contact with Allied forces regarding surrender procedures. The irony of the situation proved truly bitter. The last aerial victory of the war eliminated potential participants in peace negotiations. Nevertheless, Kendall and his crew meticulously followed established procedures, demonstrating the lethal effectiveness that ensured the success of P-61 operations throughout their service history. This episode, the culmination of their combat journey, only emphasized the thin line between duty and tragedy. Hours after this final interception, Emperor Hirohito announced Japan's surrender by radio. Broadcasts of his speech were tracked by American intelligence stations across the Pacific. This announcement effectively ended all combat operations, including the night fighter missions that justified the Black Widow's very existence. 706 aircraft, thousands of trained service members, and millions of dollars invested in their development suddenly became obsolete after a single radio transmission. The statistical report painted a complex and multifaceted picture of operational success and strategic necessity, revealing the true value of these efforts. American P-61 night fighter squadrons destroyed 197 enemy aircraft in approximately 10 months of active combat. They also eliminated 18 V-1 flying bombs and one stray B-29 flying on autopilot over Iwo Jima. Additional victories remained unconfirmed due to combat occurring over vast ocean areas where wreckage recovery was impossible. These numbers represented far more than a mere tally of destroyed machines. They reflected the successful implementation of a revolutionary tactical doctrine. The P-61 proved that specialized night fighters could dominate the darkness through superior technology and meticulous crew training. Enemy pilots, who had previously operated with impunity at night, now found themselves hunted by invisible predators equipped with radar eyes and devastating firepower. This was a new era of aerial combat, where the advantage went to those who could see in the dark. The aircraft's legacy extended far beyond immediate combat results, encompassing broader strategic implications. Japan's abandonment of systematic night bombing campaigns freed thousands of American service members from air defense duties, allowing their redeployment to offensive operations. The UK's adoption of American night fighter doctrine influenced post-war interceptor development programs that would prove crucial during Cold War confrontations. Thus, the Black Widow left its mark not only on World War II history, but also on the shaping of future air strategies. Perhaps most significantly, the P-61 demonstrated that specialized aircraft, designed for specific missions, could achieve tactical success despite apparent shortcomings in traditional performance metrics. Speed and maneuverability mattered less than radar capabilities and firepower when engagements occurred in complete darkness against unsuspecting targets. The lessons learned from Black Widow operations influenced jet interceptor design for decades to come. When Kendall landed Jaws .81 for the last time as a combat aircraft, he realized that his .82 plane had fully accomplished its purpose. Critics who doubted the P-61's value failed to understand the fundamental nature of night combat, where victory belonged to those who could see without being seen and strike without warning. Sometimes what seems unnecessary is precisely what is vital when you're fighting a war at night. Oh, this war! an eternal struggle, where every day is a new trial, and every night is a mystery full of dangers. Have you ever wondered what truly happens when the sun sets and the sky becomes a black canvas for deadly games? How do those who fight in utter darkness see their enemy? And what drives them when there are only stars and echoes of distant gunfire all around? You've probably asked yourself countless times, how can one even fight when the enemy is invisible and every shadow hides a threat? What does it take to become a true hunter in the night? And why are some planes, despite their imperfection on paper, indispensable in real combat? And most importantly, why do decision makers sometimes completely fail to understand those who risk their lives every second? Today, we'll dive into a story that will make you rethink your perceptions of night combat. Prepare to learn about an aircraft that literally changed the rules of the game in the dark, but whose true value remained underestimated. We'll tell you about the Black Widow, the P-61, and how its creators and pilots defended its reputation against skeptical officials who saw only numbers, not real feats. Stay with us and watch until the end, because we'd be especially grateful for a like and a subscription. And, of course, don't forget to tell us in the comments where you're watching this video from. After the armistice settled over the battlefields, abruptly ending active hostilities, came a time of equally fierce, but now bureaucratic, battles. The War Department's Evaluation Board faced a complex task: to determine the true value of the P-61 to the entire doctrine of American air power. In September 1945, Lieutenant Herman Heinst, one of those who had personally experienced the intricacies of night operations, set out to defend his aircraft's reputation. The board, composed primarily of senior officers whose feet had never stepped into a night fighter cockpit, approached the Black Widow program with outright skepticism, focusing exclusively on economic efficiency and strategic necessity. In his testimony, Ernst sought to convey the operational realities that remained invisible behind dry statistical reports. The 127 confirmed kills represented only the tip of the iceberg. These were only the victories where wreckage was found or evidence obtained. However, dozens of other interceptions occurred over the vast expanses of the ocean, where enemy aircraft simply vanished from radar screens after encountering P-61 crews. The true number of downed targets remained unknown, but battle-hardened veterans understood well that many successful intercepts left no recoverable evidence. More importantly, the psychological impact on enemy operations proved virtually impossible to measure with conventional metrics. Japanese night bombing essentially ceased not only due to fuel shortages or pilot losses, but also because American radar-equipped interceptors turned such missions into an extremely dangerous undertaking. Enemy commanders, who had previously regularly raided Allied targets, now found they could not guarantee the survival of their aircraft even beyond the initial interception zone. The questions posed by the Evaluation Board clearly demonstrated their fundamental misunderstanding of night fighter doctrine and operational requirements. Board members repeatedly focused on the P-61's lower speed compared to day fighters, completely ignoring the fact that maximum speed was irrelevant in night interception scenarios. They criticized the aircraft's complexity and high maintenance demands, failing to recognize that successful night operations required sophisticated radar systems and specialized crew training that simpler aircraft simply could not provide. Stay with us and watch until the end, because we'd be especially grateful for a like and a subscription. And of course, don't forget to tell us in the comments where you're watching this video from. Soon, Jack Northrop himself appeared before the commission to defend his engineering philosophy and technical decisions. The aircraft manufacturer faced the threat of a potential congressional investigation into development costs and production schedules, making his testimony critically important for corporate reputation and perhaps future military contracts. Northrop emphasized that the P-61 met every specification requirement set by the Army Air Forces during initial procurement discussions. The twin-boom configuration provided optimal radar placement without propeller interference, allowing for detection ranges that single-engine fighters could never achieve. The heavy armament package delivered sufficient firepower to destroy targets with minimal exposure time, reducing vulnerability during attacks. Most critically, the aircraft's fuel capacity and structural integrity supported extended patrol missions across vast Pacific distances, which would have been impossible with lighter interceptors. Northrop's technical presentation included a detailed analysis of alternative approaches that the Army Air Forces had considered in the early stages of development. British Mosquito night fighters, despite their superior speed and proven European combat experience, lacked the necessary range for Pacific operations. Modified P-38 Lightnings, equipped with radar pods, suffered from asymmetric loading issues, creating dangerous handling characteristics. Single-engine fighters carrying external radar installations experienced significant performance degradation, completely negating their speed advantages. Manufacturer data unequivocally demonstrated that no existing aircraft could perform the night fighter mission as effectively as the purpose-built P-61. Critics advocating for alternative procurement solutions failed to grasp the unique requirements of night interception operations, where success depended on sensor capabilities and firepower, not traditional performance metrics. This misunderstanding became a key stumbling block that prevented them from seeing the true value of the Black Widow. By that time, Edward Copsall, promoted to captain, had provided detailed testimony regarding radar operator training and the tactical procedures that proved successful in combat. The SCR-720 radar system was a revolutionary technology, requiring months of specialized training before operators could achieve the necessary proficiency. Its complexity, which critics deemed excessive, actually reflected the very sophisticated capabilities that allowed for precise intercepts in conditions where visual identification remained absolutely impossible. Copsall's operational analysis revealed the intricate coordination required between the pilot, radar operator, and ground guidance stations during successful missions. The P-61's three-person crew configuration provided redundancy and specialization that single-seat aircraft could never offer. Night fighter operations demanded the simultaneous management of radar tracking, navigation, communications, and weapon systems, tasks that exceeded the capabilities of individual pilots, regardless of their skill level. The captain's testimony included specific mission examples where crew coordination meant the difference between success and failure. Multiple intercept scenarios required rapid decision-making based on radar interpretation while maintaining precise aircraft control in complete darkness. The P-61's stable flight, characteristics and comprehensive instrumentation allowed crews to execute complex maneuvers that would have been impossible in less sophisticated aircraft. In a world of aviation dominated by speed and maneuverability, there was an aircraft that defied all conventional notions of aerial combat. Imagine this. You're in the sky, the night is pitch black, you can't see a thing, and somewhere out there, in the total darkness, lurks a deadly threat, invisible to the naked eye. How could a pilot possibly contend with such a challenge? Perhaps you too have faced situations where your efforts seemed undervalued and your contributions went unnoticed. We understand that feeling, yet it is precisely in such moments that true breakthroughs are born. Do you think victory in the air always depended on speed and maneuverability? What if we told you that the most crucial battles were won not by sight, but by electronics, in complete darkness, in an aircraft many considered obsolete even before it took to the skies? In this video, we'll reveal how the P-61 Black Widow, an aircraft that redefined the rules of the game, forever transformed the concept of aerial warfare. We'll uncover how a plane many deemed superfluous shaped the future of air combat. What was the true cost of victories achieved in total darkness, and why its lessons remain relevant even in the jet age. The story of the fast, $100 is key to understanding modern conflicts. Stay with us and watch until the end, as we would be especially grateful for a like and a subscription. And of course, let us know in the comments where you're watching from. One of the most compelling arguments for the Black Widow's effectiveness came from Edward Kopsel's meticulous analysis of enemy countermeasures and their striking ineffectiveness against tactics specifically developed for the P-61. Japanese pilots, attempting to evade pursuit, resorted to a wide variety of maneuvers. Sudden altitude changes, abrupt course reversals, and electronic jamming designed to break radar contact. However, none of these techniques consistently succeeded against P-61 crews. These aces of the night sky had a perfect command of their equipment, understanding both its capabilities and limitations, which allowed them to always stay one step ahead of the adversary. It was this deep technical knowledge and refined tactics that became the key to their dominance in the night sky. The official Evaluation Committee report, despite acknowledging the P-61's technical complexity and combat power, nonetheless questioned the advisability of such a specialized development from a cost perspective. The committee concluded that rapidly changing strategic circumstances limited the aircraft's operational utility. However, it prudently avoided direct criticism of procurement decisions made under different wartime conditions. This bureaucratic assessment, unfortunately, overlooked the far deeper implications of Taisko, S-Yukarado Firehearth operations for the future of air defense planning. The P-61 did not merely perform combat missions. It established doctrinal precedents and tactical procedures that profoundly influenced the development of jet interceptors throughout the nascent Cold War. The integration of airborne radar with ground guidance systems, stringent requirements for crew specialization, and the capability for all-weather interception all became standard features of post-war fighter aircraft. Moreover, this aircraft served as vivid proof that American industrial might was capable of producing highly complex weapon systems that could not only match but surpass the best enemy designs. The SCR-720 radar was an embodiment of technological superiority, that provided Allied forces with decisive advantages in highly specialized missions. This demonstration of advanced electronics integration would prove crucial for maintaining air superiority in future conflicts. Stay with us and watch until the end, as we would be especially grateful for a like and a subscription. And of course, let us know in the comments where you're watching from. The human cost of night fighter operations remained largely invisible to evaluation committees, which focused on statistical analysis and procurement efficiency. Crews who spent hundreds of hours in pitch darkness, hunting invisible enemies over hostile territory, carried a psychological burden that official reports never acknowledged. The constant stress of radar intercepts, weapon release decisions, and navigation difficulties in zero visibility took a toll that affected veterans for decades. Post-war correspondence from Lieutenant Ernst with other Black Widow veterans revealed the long-term impact of their shared experiences. Men who entrusted their lives to radar screens and instrument panels developed perceptions of technology and human capability that were fundamentally different from those of conventional fighter pilots. They understood that victory in modern warfare increasingly depended on superior sensors and information processing rather than traditional piloting skills. The unnecessary aircraft indeed changed the nature of aerial combat, establishing patterns for electronic warfare and precision intercept operations that defined military aviation throughout the jet era. Its critics were correct about speed limitations and complexity drawbacks, but mistaken about its strategic value and operational necessity. Sometimes the most important victories occur in the dark, where only specialized tools can bring success. Decades after the war's end, the P-61's design philosophy was validated in ways its initial critics could never have foreseen. By 1950, the emergence of Soviet long-range bombers capable of delivering nuclear weapons overnight transformed the requirements for American air defense. The Continental Air Defense Command desperately sought intercept capabilities that could operate in all weather, day or night, against targets capable of approaching at any altitude or speed. The lessons learned from Black Widow operations became foundational doctrine for the new generation of jet interceptors entering service in the 1950s. The Northrop F-89 Scorpion, Lockheed F-94 Starfire, and other Cold War interceptors embody design principles first pioneered in the P-61 program. Twin-engine configurations provided a margin of safety during long patrols over water, while complex radar systems ensured all-weather intercept capabilities that single-engine day fighters could never match. Herman Ernst, now a retired Air Force colonel, participated in the testing of these new interceptors, applying his invaluable combat experience to tactical doctrine and crew training requirements. His insights proved vital during the transition from propeller-driven to jet night fighters, particularly concerning the integration of ground guidance systems with airborne radar equipment. Ernst's analysis emphasized that technological advancement alone could not guarantee operational success. The P-61's effectiveness depended as much on crew training and tactical discipline as it did on advanced equipment. Pilots and radar operators required hundreds of flight hours to develop proficiency in night intercept procedures, and this investment in training could not be abbreviated by simplified aircraft systems or automated equipment. The colonel's recommendations influenced Air Defense Command training programs throughout the 1950s, establishing specialized schools for night fighter crews and standardizing intercept procedures developed from combat experience during World War II. These doctrinal foundations proved crucial as Soviet bomber formations began testing American air defense responses amidst the heightened tensions of the Cold War. Edward Kopsel, now working as a technical consultant for radar manufacturer Westinghouse, applied his operational knowledge to developing improved intercept systems for next-generation fighters. The SCR-720 radar, which equipped the P-61, represented primitive technology compared to post-war developments, but the tactical procedures Kopsel refined remained fundamentally unchanged. Kopsel's work highlighted the critical importance of human-machine interface design in complex weapon systems. The most sophisticated radar equipment was meaningless if operators could not quickly and accurately interpret information in stressful combat scenarios. His experience with P-61 crew coordination requirements influenced the design of two-seat fighters that became standard for interceptors throughout the jet era. The former radar operator's technical presentations to military audiences consistently emphasized the psychological factors that determined success or failure during night intercept missions. Crews operating in complete darkness, relying entirely on electronic sensors and instrument displays, faced unique stresses that demanded specialized training and equipment design. These insights proved invaluable as air defense planners grappled with the challenges of nuclear-era intercept requirements. Have you ever wondered how an aircraft initially considered too cumbersome and inefficient could forever change the rules of aerial combat and lay the groundwork for an entire era of jet aviation? How a machine whose flaws seemed obvious transformed those very, quote, 117 into decisive advantages for future generations of fighters. And could we, as observers or even participants, have missed such vital lessons by focusing only on superficial characteristics, ignoring profound potential? This is precisely what happened with the P-61-19, an aircraft many deemed superfluous, but which ultimately became a prophet. Perhaps you too have encountered situations where your ideas or projects were rejected, only to prove innovative and ahead of their time years later. The story of the P-61 is one of such triumph. This seemingly slow and not so graceful fighter for daytime combat laid the doctrinal and technological foundations that would define air defense operations for generations to come. In this video, we will reveal how just one aircraft, the P-61 Mosquito, laid the groundwork for the entire subsequent jet era, and how its lessons remain relevant to this day. Jack Northrop's aircraft company, which created the Black Widow, skillfully leveraged its accumulated experience to compete in the most prestigious Cold War defense competitions. It was thanks to the knowledge gained from developing the P-61 that the company was able to offer unique solutions for flying wing bombers and advanced interceptors. Engineering developments concerning radar system integration, complex electronics layout, and crew station ergonomics gave Northrop undeniable advantages that competitors found difficult to replicate. The post-war success of the F-89 Scorpion night fighter clearly demonstrated the enduring relevance of the design principles first applied in the Black Widow program. The twin-boom configuration, powerful armament, and sophisticated radar systems, once criticized as excessive, became standard characteristics for American interceptors throughout the 1950s and 1960s. Northrop's corporate archives preserve detailed technical documentation on the P-61 program, including test data, operational reports, and invaluable crew feedback. This institutional knowledge allowed the company to avoid repeating design errors while incorporating lessons learned from real combat operations. Stay with us and watch until the end to learn all the details of this amazing story. We would be especially grateful for a like and a subscription. And of course, don't forget to tell us in the comments where you're watching from. Lee Kendall, the pilot who scored the last aerial victory of the war in a Shiochi 120s, maintained close ties with air defense development programs after returning to civilian aviation. His extensive experience from long-duration patrol missions over the Pacific significantly influenced the requirements for next-generation interceptors, tasked with defending North American airspace against Soviet bomber incursions. Kendall's operational insights clearly underscored the enduring importance of aircraft endurance and crew comfort for successful air defense missions. The P-61's fuel capacity and spacious crew quarters allowed for patrols lasting 6 hours or more, capabilities that proved essential for maintaining effective intercept coverage over vast geographical areas. The former captain actively participated in technical consulting, evaluating proposed interceptor designs and their suitability for air defense missions. His combat experience provided a unique perspective that engineering analysis alone could not offer, particularly regarding the practical limits of crew performance during extended, stressful operations. Stay with us and watch until the end to learn all the details of this amazing story. We would be especially grateful for a like and a subscription. And of course, don't forget to tell us in the comments where you're watching from. By 1960, strategic analysts began to recognize the P-61's historical significance, extending far beyond its immediate military contributions. The aircraft set precedents for the development of specialized weapon systems crafted to meet specific tactical requirements, rather than optimizing traditional performance parameters. This design philosophy would prove crucial for creating effective responses to evolving threats throughout the Cold War era. The Black Widow's integration of advanced sensors, heavy armament, and crew specialization created operational capabilities that exceeded the sum of its individual components. This systemic approach to aircraft design became standard practice for military aviation throughout the jet era, influencing everything from air superiority fighters to strategic reconnaissance aircraft. Perhaps most significantly, the P-61 vividly demonstrated that technological superiority could provide decisive advantages in specialized mission areas where conventional wisdom suggested alternative approaches. The aircraft's critics were right about its limitations in daytime combat scenarios, but mistaken about the strategic importance of night intercept capabilities. Veterans who flew combat missions in Black Widows carried with them unique perspectives on the interplay between technology and tactical success. Their experiences proved that complex equipment demanded equally sophisticated training and operational procedures to achieve maximum effectiveness. These lessons proved invaluable as military aviation entered the missile age, where human judgment remained crucial despite increasing automation. The unnecessary fighter indeed evolved into something far more significant than its original critics could have imagined. It laid the doctrinal foundations, technological precedents, and operational procedures that would define air defense operations for generations to come. The night belonged to those with superior sensors and firepower, a principle the P-61 convincingly proved in its brief but decisive operational career.